It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I understand we do have Jerry Cox is on the line. This is the president of the Family Council is joining us now. We have Mr. Jerry Cox. Jerry, it's always a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to be on there. Sorry, I'm a bit late. I could not find my cell phone. I don't know if anybody has that problem once in a while.
Oh, man, I do. And I will say that I absolutely panic when that happens.
Yep. You know what? It was right where I left it.
There we go. Yeah, I have to retrace my steps as well. So Jerry, we've got the Arkansas General Assembly. They're convening on Monday. The 14th is starting probably what's going to be a 3-month process or so. And I just wanted to have you on so you could articulate some of your priorities of Family Council, what you guys are working on, what you hope to accomplish.
Sure. Well, first of all, yesterday, Americans United for Life, one of the nation's premier national, pro-life groups, released their rankings for the most pro-life states in America. And for the second year, Arkansas is number 2. We're the second most pro-life state in America based on the laws that we have on the books. And so Arizona's number 1. We're right behind them. And so what we want to do is work with our friends in the legislature and the governor and the attorney general, and we want to pass some additional restrictions on abortions that will protect women's health. And I believe we can see Arkansas move into number 1 as being the most pro-life state in America. So we have about half a dozen pieces of legislation that we're working on right now with members of the General Assembly. We're getting those bills drafted, and we hope to see those filed, obviously soon because the legislature starts next week.
Yeah, that's fantastic news. I do know there has been some bills in the past trying to protect the health of women when it comes to abortion. A lot of people out there on the left, Jerry, say that abortion is safe and there's nothing to worry about, but that's not the case.
Well, it's absolutely, obviously half. It's a bad way to say it, but half of people that go into an abortion clinic don't come out alive.
Yes.
And that's just the sobering fact about it. The good news is that people who are in a situation where they have an unplanned pregnancy, there is help out there that will, these pregnancy resource centers all around the state will help women who have an unplanned pregnancy, help them put their child up for adoption, help them find a place to live, help them with maternity clothes, those kinds of things. So there's help out there, but at the same time, we don't want these abortion doctors to treat women like cattle and just run them through one right after the other, do the abortion without any regard for the health of the women. And we've seen that in other states, like with the Gosnell situation in Pennsylvania. So one of the goals that we have is to create a situation where these doctors are not allowed to mistreat women who are just in a bad way. So for one thing, I think we need to extend the waiting period so that women don't just walk in and get the abortion on demand immediately, but they have time to reflect on that. And right now it's a 48-hour waiting period. I don't see why we shouldn't push that out to 72 because the state of Missouri has done that. And study after study shows that if women have some time to consider the ramifications of what they're about to do, many make a better choice. And so even if you were going to have any other kind of medical procedure, most of the time the doctor gives you a chance to think about it unless you're in an emergency situation. So lots of good possibilities there.
Wow. That's fantastic. So are the goals of the Family Council this upcoming legislative session, is it mostly focused on the pro-life side of things? Is there anything else? I mean, I know we've got medical. Go ahead.
Well, we have some other issues, and one of these is very closely related to the whole pro-life area, and that's our health care rights of conscience bill, we believe so strongly that our country was founded on the principle of people have a right to act on their sincerely held religious beliefs as long as they're not breaking a law or, hurting somebody. And so we don't want to see healthcare professionals ever be forced to participate in an abortion or other medical procedures that they may find in total violation of their sincerely held religious beliefs. And these laws have been in place in places around the country like Illinois and Mississippi and so forth, and they've really served the public well.
Mm-hmm.
And we attempted to pass a good law 2 years ago, and the legislature refused to do so. And so we're going to make our case again. In fact, we were in meetings yesterday about that because, Paul, our country respects right of conscience so much that we'll let people opt out of combat if they are a conscientious objector. And so I don't want to see our religious liberties and our right to act on our beliefs ever have to take a back seat to, let's say the LGBTQ agenda,
mm-hmm.
where somehow you're going to be forced to embrace that lifestyle, or abortion, where you're going to be forced to participate in an abortion. We're just not that kind of country. And so we're going to try to make our case and see if we can get a good law passed to protect rights of conscience.
I think that's really, really good. And, there may be some people out there listening to this that might say, well, is this really a problem? Are there doctors being forced to perform procedures that, conflict with their conscience now? And I don't know of any, but I will just say this. I don't want to wait for that problem, to happen or to get worse. I would like to do something preemptive because, and here's the key, and we need our legislators to know this. The line of thought is out there that if you don't want to perform an abortion, well, then you should have thought about that before you decided to become a doctor. It's out there. I've talked to people. I went man on the street style several years ago, Jerry, and talked to the LGBT community when they were down at the Capitol protesting the Religious Freedom Bill. And,
right.
And I talked to them about this, whether it was a baker, whether you are a florist. They were under the assumption that if you want to have a business, then you have to, then you have to bake the cake. Then you have to serve at the wedding, at the religious ceremony. And then I went to the doctor argument, and they said, well, then, you can't be a doctor unless you're in total agreement with what the LGBTQ community wants.
Well, yeah, and see, think about this. These rights of conscience go all kinds of directions. For example, if you're in medical school, should you as a medical school student be forced to learn how to do an abortion before you can get your license to be a doctor? If we get to that point, then Christians who have a sincerely held belief are going to be put in a place where either they've got to go do an abortion to get their medical license, or you can't be a doctor. And so that plays out that way in other professions. What about counselors? Let's say that you're a professional counselor. They say, you can't counsel people that marriage of a man and a woman is better than marriage of two men. If you're going to tell people that, we're not going to give you your license. And on and on. And that's the upside down world that we live in. And make no mistake, those storm clouds are forming in other places around the country. And it frustrates the daylights out of me because people here in Arkansas will say, well, it's not a problem here. Well, so I get accused of trying to solve problems that don't exist. But then when the problem manifests itself, they turn around and look at me and say, Jerry, why are you so reactionary? And I'm like, well, I tried to tell you it was going to be a problem. Now it is. And all we can do now is react to it. And so what we're trying to do is to prevent some bad outcomes. Nobody should lose their license to be a counselor before we pass a law. We ought to pass a law to protect that ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And I've talked to some military people, and they like to use the term, to be left of the bang. So you've already anticipated the event. But if you're right of the bang and you're going to try to scramble after the problem exists, well, then that's everybody scrambling, and it ends up being worse for everyone.
Exactly. And so, if years ago we could have passed a law that says that men can't go into the women's bathrooms, we could have done that. Now, people would have said, well, that's silly. Nobody would ever do that. But now, when you try to pass a law that says men can't go in the women's bathroom, you have the LGBTQ community all over the governor and everybody else, and people having conniptions, and it's really difficult to do that now. But 10 years ago, we could have done it without a whimper, probably.
Wow.
But people would have said, well, that's ridiculous. We don't need a law like that. But by the time you need it, it's almost too hard to pass it.
That's a great point. Several years ago, the bathroom situation, and people would have been like, this is, a solution in search of a problem, and now look where we are. So we need to be proactive, right, and we need to encourage our legislators to get on board. Jerry, the casino amendment passed this last November. The people of Arkansas voted for casinos. This is something I'm sure that you're aware of, addiction, gambling, and what that can do to our families. Do you have any thoughts or any legislation or ideas about the casinos?
Yeah, here's the thing. The people of Arkansas voted and passed a casino amendment. I dare say that 99.99% of the people that voted for that measure never bothered to read it. And that's, I vote on things that I don't read too sometimes. But if they had read it and understood it, I don't believe they would have voted for it, because what it does is it writes 4 entities into our state constitution. It gives them a monopoly over all the casino gambling in Arkansas. And what's more, even though the people in Pope County, Russellville, have voted and said, we don't want a casino, they're still pushing and trying to force that casino on the people of Russellville. I met with them Tuesday night, and I met with them again yesterday, and they don't want it. They passed an ordinance saying we don't want a casino in Pope County. But the way that constitutional amendment is written, I fear it's going to be like a bulldozer that will just push their little ordinance right out of the way and go ahead and allow these casino interests to build a casino there in spite of the wishes of the people of the county. And that's the sad outcome of that casino amendment. And unfortunately, there's not a lot the legislature can do, because the amendment was written by the gamblers to purposely tie the hands of the legislature. In fact, Oaklawn over in Hot Springs and Southland, they're paying less in taxes now than they were before the amendment passed. And the governor even talked about that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was the day after the election he started talking about it. The state of Arkansas was losing $40 million because Oaklawn and Southland's taxes went down, and they haven't built these other casinos yet. So it's a dangerous thing for a state to become dependent on taxes from any kind of vice like gambling or marijuana or even alcohol or tobacco, because then the state has a vested interest in seeing people buy more of that or do more of that. And that's a bad way for a state to operate, to encourage people to do things that are harmful in order for the state to collect more tax dollars.
Jerry Cox, president of the Family Council, sir, it is always great to have you on. I appreciate your work. I know the people of Arkansas do as well, and I'll see you at the Marble Palace, sir.
Hey, it'll be fun.
All righty. You be
safe.
Have
thanks.
a great weekend.
All
Folks,
right, you too. Bye-bye.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back here in just a moment.